Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ISC Research Masterclass, Engaging International Schools. My name is Spencer Hawkes. I'm from BMI Times Higher Education. I'm the sales director here, and I'm joined by Diane Glass. And Diane Glass is going to be doing the majority of the presentation today. Before we get started on that, I just wanted to bring you up to speed with a few developments that Times Higher Education and BMI are working on in the international school counselor market. So let's get cracking. So here we are. Hello, everybody. And I'm going to be talking now a little bit about how BMI Times Higher Education work with high school counsellors. So for those of you that don't know BMI, we've been going for 36 years. We are the world's largest international student recruitment and media company. We are, as of last year, proudly part of Times Higher Education, and the joining together of the two brands has certainly created lots of opportunities, including in the international school counsellor market. So to prove those long 35 years, here's a picture of myself taken in, I think, 1991 in Brasilia, when I was there with the CEO of BMI. That's Samir Zaveri behind me. I'm sure a lot of people will know who he is. And there we are on a stand in Brazil with actual magazines and books. This is pre-internet, people. So that's how long that we've been going. And how do we work with universities and other institutions? Well, we organize over 85 student recruitment events around the world. We run virtual events for targeting students. We have huge social media campaigns, all the things that you would expect. And we connect our clients with three key stakeholders. Those are global scholarship funding organizations. We connect them with high school counselors, and we'll be talking about that in a second. And we also connect them with the international office directors through our higher education workshops. So here we can see the three core areas that BMI Times Higher Education works with. Students and parents. So there's a picture of our event that took place in Abu Dhabi earlier this year. As you can see, very busy fairs. We run some of the biggest and busiest fairs in the world, where universities have been recruiting for decades. On the right, you can see scholarship funding bodies. Now, that gentleman there is Geronimo Castro, who is the director of Colfuturo, a funding body from Colombia that last year gave $52 million to Colombian students to pursue their study abroad. And he is photographed in London at our Global Scholarship Forum, which is a large gathering. BMI fly in the heads of global scholarship bodies from around the world and have 2 days of meetings with universities that fly in to meet them. There in the middle, we have high school counselors, and this is our event that took place in Vietnam, and you can see high school counselors from Vietnam meeting with universities there. So let's talk about how Times Higher Education is working with international schools. Now, we have developed the Times Higher Education Counselor Accreditation Program. I'm sure lots of you have heard of this. For any of you who were at International ACAC in Florida last week, you would have heard a lot of information about it there. But what is it? So, Times Higher Education and BMI have created an international schools advisory board. You can see them in front of you, and I'm sure there's people that you know. This advisory board is to help develop its proposition for the rapidly expanding international schools sector. The board will help develop world-class personal development sessions and ensure best practice and transparency across Times Higher Education and BMI services for international schools. Times Higher Education and BMI are in the process of creating the world's largest network of accredited high school counselors. And through an accredited continuing professional development, CPD, program, an online resource platform, and a global series of in-person and virtual networking events, we are developing a proposition by counselors for counsellors that will provide every counsellor in the world with the resources, insights, and contacts that they need to ensure their students get the best possible support when making one of their biggest life decisions. And what's that biggest life decision? Which higher education to study, to pursue in order to maximize career outcomes. Now, it's very important to note that all of Times Higher Education counsellor-facing activities are free of charge for counsellors, and Times Higher Education will not sell counsellor data. So there's the board. How is this working? So we already have BMI's global series of workshops, roadshows, and forums. Some of you may have participated in our International School Forum and workshops around the world, and we are looking to expand them into new territories. You'll see us in Indonesia in a big way over the next couple of years, so keep an eye on where those are happening. Part of this is the accredited CPD training. So this is a course which can take approximately 12-hour modules. So you could do it all in a 12-hour period. At the end of that, you submit a written piece, the counsellors submit a written piece, which then goes to Times Higher Education journalists, and then the accreditation comes through. Then the last thing that we're developing in this area is an advisory hub. And this is going to be a dedicated platform for high school counsellors. If any of you are familiar with THE Campus, this is a huge resource sharing platform which is used by universities all over the world to share best practice, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing with the THE platform. So THE Counsellor is going to be a brand and an area where counsellors will be visiting from all over the world to get further information. Now, here's what it looks like. So this is actually happening, folks. So in May, Times Higher Education flew in 80 counsellors from around the world for the first ever Times Higher Education Global International Schools Forum and Workshop. What did it look like? Well, okay, that first picture there, that's a gala dinner which we held for counsellors in Henry VIII's house at Palace and Hatfield House. Very British, just after the coronation, fantastic. There in the middle picture, you can see the ballroom where we held all the networking meetings. So 2 days of meetings between universities who have chosen which high school counsellors they want to meet with. On the right, you can see a picture of the development board, and there's Chris from International ACAC, who we flew in to do a very motivating speech for the counsellors as well. And here we can see Bukit Ayez, who's delivering some of the training program there. So this has happened. This took place in May. It's created an enormous bang in the industry, and we're delighted with the outcome from this. So that took place in London, but what we're also doing is running these counsellors and these training sessions in different parts of the world. So you can see Colombia, Brazil, UAE, Vietnam, Indonesia. These are all happening. These are where counsellors are going to be getting their accreditation, either online or through in-person workshops that we're running. And here we're about to develop some great news here. We were hoping for 300 by the time we went to International ACC at Miami last week. There are now over 1,800 counsellors who are registered and who have taken the CAP. They are from 1,300 international schools from 140 different countries. Now, this accreditation program we are very proud to deliver with Common Purpose, an excellent training Common Purpose deliver university training development. They work with very large blue chip organizations, and they worked with us and the advisors to develop the program. And so here we can see some of those advisors in London, some smiley faces, and I'm sure there's people that you recognize in there. And this was the first cohort of people who have successfully taken the CAP, a very influential bunch that went on to ensure that now we're at 1,800 counsellors enrolled in this program. So THE Counsellor, this is the platform that's going to be launching. You can see some examples of it here. There is a certificate from the program which can be displayed. So in terms of the certificate, we've got the accredited counsellor. So how it works for counsellors. For them, it's good for their CV because they can say that they're a Times Higher Education accredited counsellor. And you can see here that we've created collateral to go onto the website of the schools as well. So for a school, an international school who might be encouraging new parents, they can say, well, when your child reaches the latter stages of their education, our Times Higher Education accredited counsellor will be assisting them with that massive decision that they're going to be taking. So it's good for the schools, it's good for the counsellors, it's good for the industry, it's free of charge, it's not for profit, and we're very, very proud to be involved in that. So we have got the program running. We were hoping for 300 participants. We've got over 1,800. The Counsellor Hub is going to be launched. We are part of the movement, and we're very, very proud to share this information with you. So if you do want any more information on BMI, or if you want any more information on the Counsellor Accreditation Program, then here's my details. We are going to be circulating copies of these presentations to you. So please feel free to reach out, and we are happy to share any information. We're very proud about this project that we're running. But also, I'm equally proud of the fact that today we are sharing our time with Diane Glass. Now, Diane Glass is been with ISC Research for 11 years. She leads the commercial sales team, which supports education suppliers and higher education institutions globally in their strategic development of business with the world's international schools. Diane has worked with many leading education brands and higher education institutions, and also has significant experience guiding startups and SMEs within the sector. Now, Diane's knowledge of the international schools market and business development best practice within it is extensive. Her long career in sales and marketing includes running her own business for 16 years. Diane, we all know how hard that is. Diane has presented at many conferences, including BET, GSS, FETC, ISTE Live, International ACAC, and Wheeler. She works closely with several leading trade associations to ensure best export intelligence and solutions specific to the international schools market, and to ensure they're accessible to members. And now, ISC Research, of course, is the leading producer of independent data, trends, and intelligence on the global English medium international schools market. Its reports and data solutions provide access to detailed market data and intelligence to inform decisions on school planning, school improvement, and to support brand new school development and investment. Ladies and gentlemen, a great pleasure, Diane Glass.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed, Spencer. It's really great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Hello, everybody. And let me just tell you what I'm planning on doing today. The aim of the session is to highlight new ways for higher education institutions really to develop their engagement with the international schools. I'm planning on, first of all, agreeing a definition of international schools with you, identifying why they're different and why they're so important to higher education institutions. I'm going to give an update on current international school market statistics and trends, and then discuss new ideas and best practice in terms of connecting more successfully with the international schools. For those of you who are not familiar with ISC Research, let me begin with a quick introduction. As Spencer said, ISC Research has been working in the K-12 international schools market since 1994, and we are the world's leading provider of data and intelligence on this unique and important education sector. For almost 30 years now, we've guided schools with their growth plans, we've informed investors on new school development, helped universities to engage with international schools. We've supported the international expansion of hundreds of education suppliers, partnered with all of the main international school associations, and kept the world's press up to date with latest market statistics and developments. We track the market closely for shifts, challenges, good practice, new development, and emerging opportunities. We don't just use AI to collect publicly accessible data, we collect our data directly from the schools. Our field research team is dedicated to interviewing and talking with a breadth of international school leaders to gather reliable qualitative data. Raw data and intelligence is then verified and analysed to produce the most reputable, current and comprehensive research on the international schools sector. Because we've been collecting and analysing this data for more than 25 years, we're also able, of course, to produce valuable market trends as well as projections. Data we collect is provided to our higher education partners via our live portal, which we call ISC Outreach for Higher Education. And I'll be talking a little bit more about this later. The ISC Outreach portal provides both up-to-date data and informed market analysis. And I aim to demonstrate today that both are necessary for successful recruitment strategies aimed at developing student numbers from the international schools. Now I'd like to discuss what it is that makes the global K-12 international schools market unique. It's different even from the independent or private schools. I want to explain why these schools should be such a priority for you all. So first of all, let's take a look at market growth and breakdown. Over the last 5 years, which of course includes the 2 very challenging years impacted by COVID-19, the number of English medium international schools around the world has increased by 12%, from 11,772 to 13,192. The pandemic did affect the market in many ways. Lack of confidence for the future did impact investment and development for a while. However, that's changed now, and investment and development interest is increasing. ISC Research is actually aware of at least 300 international schools currently in development. As you can see, admission student numbers have increased dramatically. The number of students attending international schools globally now stands at 6.5 million, and that's a 9.5% growth in the last 5 years. This has helped to increase the total income of the sector, and this we base on annual tuition fees, by 11.5% in just 5 years. The market is worth $56.2 billion US. Our research shows the demand that continues to grow for English medium international school education, particularly in Asia. Our January 2023 data analysis shows that 64% of all current international school student enrollment is located within the international schools in Asia, and I'm including the Middle East in that. And the region hosts 57% of all the English medium international schools currently open in the world. The last 10 years, between January 2013 and January 2023, Asia has actually seen a 59.6% increase in the number of international schools and a 62.4% increase in student enrollment. The graph you can see shows the enrollment totals, highlighting in red the growth during the last 5 years of the 7 leading sub-regions of the world for international schools. And you can see that the top 4 are all in Asia. Western Asia, which is the Middle East excluding Egypt, continues to dominate international school student enrollment. Southern Asia, Eastern Asia, and Southeastern Asia are all experiencing strong growth in demand right now. Based on our continual field research and data analysis, ISC Research believes that the sub-regions likely to see the most notable growth over the next few years, both in terms of number of schools and student enrollment, will be Southern Asia, and I'm thinking particularly of India here, Eastern Asia, looking particularly at Japan, Southeastern Asia, highlighting Vietnam, Singapore, and Cambodia, and Western Asia, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and to a lesser degree, some growth across Europe. So what are the key factors that make international schools so different from all other schools internationally? And why are these factors important to you? Well, first of all, we have to highlight English as a major medium of instruction. According to the OECD, in its 2020 report, How Language Learning Opens Doors, the English language is still the one considered most necessary for education and work. For many parents around the world, language lessons alone are not enough, and nor is after-school tutoring. For those parents who live in a non-English speaking country and want their child to have access to global higher education and all the career opportunities that that brings, immersion of learning using the English language remains the prime reason to select an English medium international school, and demand from parents in many parts of the world for an education in English continues to increase. Second point is the pathway to global higher education, because in addition to the language of instruction, most international schools follow a curriculum that prepares students for globally recognized qualifications at ages 16 and 18. Some 50% of all K-12 international schools teach a curriculum or offer examinations that originate in the UK. About 36% of the schools offer Cambridge programs. Some 23% teach a curriculum from the United States, and IB curricula are taught at about 22% of schools globally. The teaching and learning approach, the exit examinations and leaving certificates offered by international schools are commonly accepted by the majority of the world's higher education institutions, as well as most multinational companies. As well as that, international curricula typically prepare students well for university-style learning approaches. They tend to be more research-driven. They encourage critical thinking and collaborative learning. In fact, many international schools now are working hard to develop their curricula further to ensure that students are prepared for the new world of work. 20th century skills, entrepreneurship, student voice, and incorporation of the UN SDGs are at the core of many of these new approaches. In addition, education at international school means that students experience cultural differences and international environments, and these experiences help broaden their horizons, bridge the language gaps, and gain much larger opportunities for higher education destinations of choice. Third thing that I would point out is the teachers at the international schools. Most schools employ expatriate teachers with the skills to teach the curriculum and with the experience to facilitate the learning approach that's delivered by the school. And as most curricular and teaching and learning approaches offered in these schools are Western, traditionally, this has meant teachers from the UK, US, Canada, and Australia. But this is changing. There's a huge shortage of English first language, well-qualified teachers within this market. And in fact, ISC research talks to more universities day by day who are offering qualifications to teachers. So teachers who may be qualified in a local national curriculum, but who can take a qualification, year's qualification, will enable them to be employed by an international school. So that's perhaps worth thinking about. Some international schools are leading change by employing a more diverse teaching staff anyway. They're actually selecting educators for their cultural understandings and their different experiences, and they're upskilling themselves necessary curriculum knowledge and pedagogical principles internally. A truly diverse teaching staff will continue to set an international school apart from other schooling options and for more equitable reasons. The point I would make is class sizes and the student-teacher interaction. Most international schools have much smaller class sizes than other school types. The current average student-teacher ratio across the whole sector is 10:1. And finally, the holistic development of students within a wider community. International schools in general are recognised for focusing on a more holistic development of the students, addressing social, emotional, psychological, as well as academic growth of the child. And this is delivered through practical creative arts and sports learning and facilities, learning outside the classroom and service learning, as well as extracurricular activities, of course. The international schools around the world take great pride in their welcoming, involved, and robust communities, and they recognise the fact that their schools are essential for community development. And I think in a wider context, the schools are globally focused and they provide students with the skills and the knowledge which encourage them to be active citizens in a global community. Let's have a look at what is actually driving the growth in demand for international schools. In many developing countries, new access to international schools is actually what's fueling the demand. Aspirational parents with the financial means are driven by their hopes and dreams for their child, of course, and many now turn to an international school to fulfill those wishes. Within specific locations, there may well be a lack of alternative educational options that offer globally recognised qualifications, learning in the language of English, and a style of teaching and learning that prepares young people for higher education and the workplace. The other thing I would say is that the international schools market is highly resilient. It's shifted over the last years, it's adjusted to new demands, and it continues to grow apace. So that nowadays, international schools vary extensively in the standard of their educational provision, the facilities that they offer, the tuition fees that they charge. And this means that families from a much wider range of backgrounds now have the financial means to use the international schools. The broadening of tuition fees by the schools is making the market accessible to many more families, including host nation families and expatriates within a much wider range of salaries. Many parents are attracted by the standard of learning, the student-centred approach that many schools offer, and the global qualifications promised from an international school, and those aren't necessarily available in their local public schools. Social media and peer pressure can be highly influential amongst young parents, and that can influence their school choice. International schools are a common sight in many cities of the world, and this helps raise awareness of their existence to families. It's important to point out that the offer of bicultural language and learning, with English as one of the languages and the country in which the school is located as the other, also attracts many local families. And in more recent years, this factor has been shifting to a desire for schooling that offers English as one of the languages of learning. And then we should say that for some of the very wealthiest, educationally aspirational, brand-conscious parents, rather than sending their child to board overseas, as they may traditionally have done, they're turning to the most premium international schools in their local city for schooling and personal prestige. The factors impacting the growth of international schools can change rapidly, and it's important for you to understand this. And macro and micro environments play a part. They vary significantly from one country to another, particularly if government regulations change, and they're also influenced by socioeconomic shifts such as the movement of people and the international development of cities. ISC's latest data shows that 95% of all K-12 international school students go on to higher education, with the majority going overseas. In line with global trends, the US remains the most popular destination. This popularity is decreasing. The UK, it seems, continues to send out rather unwelcoming messages, remains second in line. And Australia's popularity has waned somewhat too recently. These trends will continue to shift and change. What we do know is within the increasing number of local students attending K-12 international schools, the growing trend towards seeking places more locally. Asian universities are growing in reputation. Students can stay closer to home and closer to their culture. It might be safer, and it's certainly much cheaper. So, although there are huge opportunities in this market, it's fair to say that competition is increasing. Majority of international schools don't use independent agents to support higher education pathways. As Spencer said, they employ professional college counsellors within the school to prepare their students for entry to higher education. Most international schools and their college counsellors will promote best fit selection, carefully matching students' study and pathway goals to an institution's ethos, course offer, learning model, extracurricular opportunities, location, study outcomes, workplace opportunities, etc. Schools will also organise opportunities for students to be introduced to universities early stages of their selection process through events and university fairs, amongst other channels. We know that many international schools start the initial stages of a student's understanding of life after high school early. The wide range of students graduating from these diverse schools now, with a range of academic abilities, a wide range of course and subject interests and choice, differences in which geographic locations will suit, and differing needs in terms of work after higher education. It's much more diverse than it used to be. I just wanted to share this slide with you. It's a quotation from one of our clients, Caroline Barr, at Leiden University. I think it's an interesting statement on, first of all, why international school students are fit universities so well, and more information on the work of college counsellors at the schools and how important that is. So what do counsellors want from the universities? I wanted to just talk briefly about this information that we've learned talking to college counsellors at the international schools, telling us what they want and need from universities. Well, first thing is, and the most important thing, is long-term relationships. That's what they're looking for. They want to have a relationship that means that you understand exactly what their school and their students are all about, and they are kept up to date with your institution. So this means regular meetings to share news about programs or what's going on the university campus, so that you can inform them about the process, the application and entry process, or current students that are going through the process, former students. Keeping connections is positive for both sides involved. This is what we hear from the counsellors. Many of the counsellors, of course, have to deal with hundreds of universities, so they don't want to be inundated with information. It's relevant to have a point of context to run by them. Establishing the relationship through regular meetings is still essential if you're going to build trust. And trust is a really important word for counsellors. They take very good care of their students, so building a relationship with them based upon trust is absolutely essential if you're going to grow that relationship. I mentioned that it's really important that clear communication, honest, relevant communication is really important too. Focused events and recruitment activities is what they look for, rather than a continual drop-ins that have happened over previous years. It's interesting, actually, we had a lot of feedback during the pandemic when universities couldn't actually visit schools. A lot of the international schools said that the communication was improved. I think maybe universities were putting more effort in, were trying harder, felt that they needed to because they weren't actually visiting the schools, but also reports were that universities had become much more innovative in terms of the way that they communicated with college counsellors at the schools. So that, I think, is quite an interesting point for you to be aware of. So I hope I've convinced you now that not every international school is a premium school, and not every student is a straight A or A star student who's going to want to study the traditional international school subjects of IT, medicine, business, or law. These students make far more adventurous subject choices now. Their parents aren't all vastly wealthy. There are new concerns about safety, value for money. Of course, work opportunities are much more important than they ever were. So, how to begin building relationships with new college counsellors at schools new to you. I'm going to discuss market segmentation. It's crucial to be able to identify the right international schools for you with the best potential source of candidates for your specific institution. And you need to understand key channels to developing strong ties with the counsellors. First and foremost, you need to have a really deep understanding of exactly what your institution has to offer, why students choose it, why should they choose it, and how you're going to communicate that offer. You wouldn't believe how many institutions I meet who really do not have that, who don't understand what it is that makes their institution different from their competitors. And that's, for me, is the absolute first thing. ISC research's data includes school location and ownership, age phases, student enrollment, capacity, student nationality, fees, contact details of staff across many functions and seniority levels, staff salaries and benefits, nationalities, facilities, quality assurances, exams, curricula, and school supply. We also gather demographic and socioeconomic statistics for key regions, countries, and some cities, including population and growth rate, which impact the demand and prospective demand for school places. It's really important out of all of that data that you make sure you identify comprehensively the audience for your institution. Have you thought through the importance of segmenting your approach in as many ways as possible? So, curricula taught at the schools, the age range of the students, whether the school teaches bilingually, is the school for profit or not? What are the range of the fees that the schools charge? Have you identified the range of contacts at the school depending on the segmentation? Are you tailoring your message to be truly relevant depending on this segmentation? Let's explore just a few different routes to identify new target segments, perhaps, for you to approach within the international schools market. Let's think about geography, first of all. Data on the ISC outreach portal is right down to city level. So what I would say here is a couple of ideas. If you can identify schools all around the world in every country, the first thing to do would be perhaps to have a look at those markets that you are traditionally as an institution really strong in. Do you know all of the international schools in those markets? It's interesting that whenever I share data on numbers of schools in countries, even if I'm talking to a recruitment officer that, say, recruits regularly from Southeast Asia, when they look at the number of schools in the countries in Southeast Asia, they're always surprised. So it's rare to find a university that is actually aware of all of the international schools in the countries that you are responsible and recruiting from. So that's the first thing to do. And then the second thing to do, of course, is to look at those parts of the world that your institution is traditionally not so strong in. How many schools are there? Is it worth looking at new areas, and which areas would they be? The other thing to say, I think, about cities, because as I say, the data goes all the way down to city level, is, in my experience, most universities and colleges, if they're looking at a country, let's say like Thailand, they will spend all of their time concentrating probably on the capital city, maybe the second city. And within those two cities, most institutions will concentrate on the best known international schools. And all of the other international schools within a country like Thailand go begging in a way. We're approached all the time by college counsellors at international schools who think that ISC research provides a service to introduce universities to college counsellors. We don't provide that service, but what they're actually saying is that they don't get enough attention. They might be in the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the 10th tier city within a country, and actually nobody is paying them all attention and much attention, because you're all concentrating, whether it's from when you're in your office or when you're actually visiting a country, you're all concentrating on the first and the second tier cities, and you're all concentrating on the best known schools. What I try and do with universities is get them to go the other way around, to start with the smallest cities, the schools that probably aren't getting enough attention, build up a relationship with them from your office, and then think about whether or not it's worth travelling to them. Tuition fees is something else I was going to have a look at. As I've said, there's a really wide range now of tuition fees charged in the market. You know, we divide the schools up into premium, mid-market fee point schools, third tier fee point schools, and you can approach those schools differently. Do you have scholarship offers? Do you have sponsorship offers, for example, within your competitive sort of pool? Are you cost effective? You know, where do your fees sit? Is that a message that you might want to send to different schools depending on what they charge? It's another way of segmenting the schools. The curricula and the examinations, you're all obviously interested in all of the international schools. It doesn't really matter what curriculum they're teaching, but you know, could you, for example, pick out the international baccalaureate schools? Could you put together a case study which shows that your particular institution is very welcoming to IB students? That, you know, you could do a case study on one or two students, show how well they have done, how they're thriving with you, where they've gone on to work after they've been at your institution. This would be a really well-targeted, segmented communication to send to all of the IB schools, for example. When you're approaching schools that are new to you, particularly if it's by cold email, or LinkedIn message, it's absolutely vital that you demonstrate that you have done some research. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated, but you need to show that you understand what sort of international school you're talking to, that you have something relevant to say to the right person. I'm sure you already have market segmentation in place, but if you want to build strong relationships with international schools, you'll need a strategic approach. And rather than considering the international schools market as a segment within your existing target markets, you might want to define it as a primary or secondary target market, depending on your ambitions, and then identify target segments within it. You'll also want to refine your segmentation so that you can contact specific individuals working at the international schools. And the ISC Outreach portal contains a database of tens of thousands of names, job titles, email addresses, and LinkedIn profiles of department heads at the schools. So here again, carefully segmenting your audience will positively impact your lead generation activities. Thinking about your audience personas will help you reach the appropriate contact within the international schools who's most likely to engage with your content. And you'll also want to consider their behaviours or level of engagement on social media platforms like LinkedIn, which, as you know, can be a great tool for lead generation and network building. Most obvious contact, of course, at the international schools is going to be the college counsellor, but remember that the title at many schools will be guidance counsellor. How big is the school? What level of fees do they charge? Because if it's a lower tier school, they may not even have a college counsellor. So always include in your communications the head of the secondary or the high school and the head of the sixth form or the head of senior high. Many universities are going to want to promote particular courses or programs. They might be new, they might not be so well known, they might offer particular opportunities. So this means you've got the opportunity to talk to specific subject heads at the schools, pick those out for those communications, or the academic heads. Many universities that I speak to have particular offers around special education needs provision. And if that's the case for your institution, then you should be talking to the counsellor and the right person at the school about that, maybe the head of special education needs at the international school. Networking in order to build valuable relationships with schools is absolutely vital. And this transpires through their trust of influential organisations like associations, peer recommendations, and the importance of events as a channel to find out about resources. So do bear that in mind. Content marketing is really important. Important to build trust in your brand, and really important that you have expertise as far as content marketing is concerned. You need to be able to show that you understand the schools and the counsellors, you understand the challenges they face, and therefore the solutions that you can provide are of utmost importance. And this will help you stand out from competitors too, especially if you engage in topics and trends that you might not see as obviously related to your activity. So this means not only understanding the market regulations, school profiles or student communities represented, but also engaging with the topics that really matter to these communities. I mean, give you an example: work experience, readiness for the world of work, jobs after university, all top of mind with students at the moment, and schools working to make sure that they're preparing their students. So this could be, for example, the subject of some content marketing, which actually might mean that you could engage with an even wider audience at the school. The principals themselves will be interested in this. The deputy heads at the schools will be interested too. Our research shows that accessing information about new institutions through Google and other search engines, adverts in publications, videos and events, they're all valued more highly by international schools than email and promotion. Direct mailing is going to be necessary to build new relationships, and so you must refine your emailing to be more targeted and to be more relevant. What I've done here is provided you with an example of a target school profile, which you could build to personalize your approach. So data that's key here, let's consider the data that we've used to build a profile like this. You know what your existing target markets are in terms of geography, and your current segmentation most likely already includes this. However, if you've identified a target sub-region, have you identified differences and similarities of key countries in that sub-region? Have you considered the relevance of the city in which the school is found? This data, if you have access to a reliable source, can really help you define international school profiles, including looking into key and emerging markets. The profile I've put together here is of a mid-market fee point branded British international school located in a tier 2 city in a key country. The sixth form is new, and so the school is building its offer and also awareness of its offer, with the requirement to ensure that enrolment numbers grow. Its affiliation with a UK independent brand will certainly help with its differentiation, but what part could your institution play in these ambitions? Once you've built a profile like this, you can draw up a list of all schools that are similar and craft your communications to them all accordingly to make them really relevant. How are you going to make contact? Are you going to use emails? Are you going to use LinkedIn profiles? All this needs to be thought of. And as well as leveraging data, you need to make sure that you've got clear market intelligence to support your market segmentation and strategy. What country regulations might be in place that could impose restriction on your business with the international schools now, and how might they be changing? You need to identify, of course, the scale of your opportunities right now with international schools, but what are they going to look like in 5 years' time? I'll give you an example. Chinese private schools offer compulsory education to local Chinese children, now not allowed to use foreign materials, including textbooks and other resources to support the curriculum. There have been many changes in China that have been introduced with little notice very often. So if you are concentrating on China, then you need to be aware of that. If you think about the Middle East, after a number of years of slower growth and really depressed school fees and enrolment, suddenly the Middle East is booming again. Enrolments are up, new expatriate families are moving in, investment is on the up, the governments are once again allowing the school fees to increase. So really important to keep on top of what's happening within these important markets. Another route to consider in your segmentation is to explore international school groups. Many international schools exist as single entities. Many of them are part of a school group. What we mean by a school group is one which owns international schools or has a financial interest in them by managing them or providing key services to them without actually owning them. And today, the school groups are taking on much greater significance, with their potential to develop common standards and staff development, as well as build brand recognition. School groups play a crucial role in raising standards and attracting enrolment demand across the entire international schools market. We're currently tracking almost 600 school groups, and they represent 36% of the total market right now. Some of the growth in the school groups has come through new school development, but much has occurred through the acquisition of existing schools. So there are still 64% of international schools that are individual, often family or sole owned. But if you're taking an account-based approach, school groups could help you in two ways. First of all, a few groups might centralise purchasing decisions. It's unusual for higher education, but does your institution have services or products which you could provide across a group? Maybe qualifications for teachers or specialised courses. If you do have an offer like this and manage to get on the books, then this could well simplify the purchasing process for other schools within the group. Just to give you an example, the Juilliard School works with Nord Anglia. Nord Anglia own 94 international schools worldwide, and I think the Juilliard work with about 48 of them, providing specialised courses on performing arts to the latest performing arts students within those schools. So have a think about that as an institution. But secondly, and more importantly, establishing a strong relationship with a school that's a member of a group is a really great way to enhance your brand reputation and be recommended to other schools within the group, so that you can easily expand your network. So if you had access to a list of all schools within each group, you would probably find that you're working with college counsellors in some of those schools, and that can sometimes be a very quick win to get that counsellor you've already built a relationship with to introduce you to counsellors at all of the other schools within the group. So I'm just showing you here the top 5 groups and brands counting the highest number of international schools with their country of origin. I've also included the groups looking to open future schools as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much indeed. I hope you found the discussion thought-provoking and useful. If you'd like to learn more about ISC Research's K-12 international schools data and market intelligence, and how the ISC Outreach portal could support your particular institution's international undergraduate recruitment strategy, please do get in touch.
Well, absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Diane. I have got, and I'm sure we all have, copious notes that we've been writing down here. Good news is we'll be sharing these presentations afterwards. Incredible statistics coming through. Being involved in an industry which is worth $56.2 billion, absolutely extraordinary. We've got a few questions here. We're going to run through them, but I also want to say, Diane, you are very much on point here. We have some counsellors watching. We have some of the Times Higher Education Advisory Board members, and one of the Advisory Board members is writing here. Solid points on counsellor engagement, understand the need, many other good points too, with the need to build relationships from the bottom up. Don't be focusing exclusively on big schools. That went down very well. Also from another counsellor, here we go. Fabulous to hear to our university colleagues to be strategic when reaching out cold. Great internal dialogue for marketing to understand the school and building trust. These are things which the counsellors are telling us that they absolutely value. So thank you so much for that. Got a couple of questions here in the last few minutes before we finish off. In terms, so let's have a little look here. Does any of the data highlight the percentage of students attending large ranked universities, i.e. what hope for unranked smaller schools? I think it's a very valid point, and it's one which some of the universities at Times Higher Education, they say, well, look, I'm from maybe the Midwest, I'm not a high ranked school. What are my chances with in this market, Diane?
Well, that's really why I spent some time explaining the diversity of the international schools nowadays, and also the diversity of students that are coming out of those schools. Most of the institutions that ISC works with are lesser known. In fact, we have over the last few years begun to work with community colleges in the United States, which proves that, you know, this idea that the students are only going to want to go to the top universities is just quite frankly wrong. And that's why it's also really important that as an institution, you have a really clear idea of what you have to offer. You know, why should students come to you? And if you have that, then in my experience, working with the universities and colleges that we do, and using the data carefully, identifying, you know, which schools are going to be more interested in your institution. You might ignore the premium international schools completely, but really important to concentrate on the right schools for your particular institution.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Diane. There is a question here which might be the subject of a completely new webinar, but an anonymous attendee says, Diane, what are your thoughts on platforms like Unifrog and BridgeU as a tool for recruiting international school students?
Well, you'll have seen during my presentation that the data from ISC research is all about the schools and the staff at the schools. It's not about the students. So Unifrog and BridgeU are fantastic platforms. In fact, Unifrog and BridgeU are both clients of ISC research. So we mentioned earlier on that we work with a lot of education suppliers, and we work with a lot of companies who are providing pathways from the schools to university, and Unifrog and BridgeU are examples of that. All of the international examination providers use the portal as well. So the International Baccalaureate and Cambridge, the College Board, Pearson, they're all companies who are using our data as well. So yeah, fantastic platforms, both of them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Stella Maria Vasilio asks, how do you find international schools? I think we covered that quite a lot in the presentation, Diane, but how would you define an international school?
So for us, an international school is a school really that charges fees and teaches in English. Predominantly, though, in countries where English isn't the first language. And so the only kind of addition to that definition is that in countries where English is an official language, we only put a school on the database if it teaches a curriculum not of the host nation. So in places where English is the official language, there are less international schools than perhaps you might expect because of that definition.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Diane. Now, look, ladies and gentlemen around the world, we are sadly running out of time here. I have enjoyed this enormously. Diane, you have been fantastic. There are plenty more questions in, and we'll be answering those questions directly with you individually afterwards. So please give us a bit of time to get around to answering all of those individually. But thank you so much for everybody for participating in this ISC Research Times Higher Education webinar on engaging with international students, which I found extremely engaging. Diane, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody that's participated, and we look forward to catching up soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.